welcome back to this Tech and Trains channel video. In the video I'll be going through how I started off as an analog layout and then proceeded to convert to DCC just under 4 months. So one of the first steps for me was to decide which controller I was going to use, and in the end I went for the NCE 𝒯𝓃𝒾𝓃𝓈. Now that's what most people use, but my reasons were it has a nice handheld controller, has a lot more functionality than some of the other controllers out there, while being reasonably cheap, and also you can get an NCE USB interface to then connect to a computer and use computer control. These were the main reasons why I chose that particular controller. Now when the controller arrived, I had very few trains that were actually fitted with DCC or could be fitted. I didn't have all the chips and I didn't have the budget for all the chips at that particular time. So what I did was I split the layout into the outer section being DCC and the inner section being analog. As you can see, this is quite easy because I've literally got two loops, and the only place they join is right down over there at the crossover there. So it was very easy for me to do. I just needed to make sure that I never flipped the crossover, because one part was DCC and one part was analog, and that worked quite well for me because I could control analog and I could control DCC and I could control analog trains, which I didn't have the budget to put a DCC decoder in at that time. Now as the number of trains grew that I fitted DCC to, of course, as you can imagine, the area which I needed for DCC got bigger, and it got to a point where I had so many analog trains on the track, or so few at that point, that it was not worth keeping the inner section of the layout analog, and instead I just converted the whole thing to DCC and took all the trains off. Now when I first converted this, you have to be aware that you have to remove all the isolating sections first, and then you have to wire or solder point clips or equivalents to the points to make the points live, otherwise the points will act as the isolation that they do on analog. Now I was able to convert quickly, and quicker than some layouts, to DCC because I found some reasonable priced chips, and they're not the best for every loco. They are Lace DCC 8-pin, because I had to hardwire most locos, but I fitted sockets to most of them, and I fitted most of these to locos. All I can say is they work best on newer models, and if the loco doesn't have a flywheel, well, you might want to fit it with a more expensive decoder. But for me, those cheap decoders work. They're under £10 each, which is, I think they're like the only decoders that are that good a price, but the cheapness does show through. Getting back to the wiring side of things, when I converted to DCC, you'll notice that any slight power outages, say one part of the layout is like half a voltage low, it will cause this really annoying buzzing noise from the decoder, which I find annoying. And this is why you need a DCC bus wire. So basically what this wire does is you have the two tracks. So these are the two tracks. I think red's outer. Yes, red is outer. And you connect it to the places on the layout where the voltage is low, and it all just feeds back to the main power supply over there. But if you want to know which order I did the trains in, just going back to the trains, I did them in the order so that I fitted the ones with best lighting first, because on DCC of course you can see the lights a bit more because they don't turn off when the train stops. So I fitted, of course, the Class 350 was the first loco to get its decoder of the ones that I didn't buy DCC fitted. And then shortly after, I decided to go around and to fit all the locomotives that would be good with interior lights on. So I fitted interior lights to the Northern 156 along directional lighting, because that would look good on DCC, and also on the Voyager. Now I chose to wait till converting to DCC because on analog, you see, you have to have two diodes on the blanking plate to have directional lighting. and or somewhere in the circuit board. And the 156 over here just had basic circuit board. It was literally, the Hornby 156 is literally a motor attached to the track. That's literally all it is. So it was a bare strip down. I had to rewire the whole train. I got rid of the old socket. It was all a mess anyway. If you haven't seen some of my videos from a couple of years ago, you'll remember I did have problems with the wires coming out of the motor on this train. Now those are now fixed. All those issues are now fixed after I have rewired it. So obviously Hornby's wiring was a bit bad. Of course, I am basically finished converting to DCC. I do have a few small tank locos which I haven't converted to DCC, those Hornby 04Os. I've got the Collector's Club VR Black one, that has to be my favourite one. That's converted to DCC. But I found that on converting the decoders that I used didn't work very well with it. It's a bit jumpy. Which I haven't fitted, maybe sold, although I'll probably keep them for future use on a layout. Because I don't generally use steam locomotives, but I have got the decoders to fit to the main case. All these can be fitted to a train that the decoder has below. Advice I would give you if you're hardwiring locomotives, I recommend that you wire a socket into them. This allows you to change the decoder easily if it blows up, or you just want to change the decoder because it doesn't work well on the train. You won't know how well it will work on the train until you fit the decoder in the train. And if you've hardwired it, that might be a bit too late. But also, you probably need to stock up on insulation tape and heat shrink tubing, because those are what you generally use in DCC, because if you have a short circuit, chances are your decoder will blow up. And you really don't want that, because especially if it's a sound decoder, you don't want to pay £100 for a replacement sound decoder because you forgot to put your heat shrink tubing on a wire. The heat shrink tubing can cost like 50p, but unfortunately decoders aren't that cheap. So I do hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you have any further suggestions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. Please comment, like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.